1. Getting irrationally excited about small things. Your face lights up over something most people walked straight past. A documentary about deep-sea creatures. The specific way light hits a building at 4 p.m. A sandwich that was better than it had any right to be. Something tiny, ordinary, unremarkable to everyone in the room, and you're genuinely, visibly excited about it. And someone, at some point, has made you feel like that's too much. Like enthusiasm needs to be rationed. Like adults are supposed to be harder to impress. Here's what they didn't understand about what was actually happening at that moment. University of Michigan psychologist Barbara Fredrickson spent decades studying what positive emotions actually do to the brain. Her research found that emotions like joy, excitement, and interest don't just feel good. They physically broaden the brain's cognitive range. They increase the scope of attention, open up flexible thinking, and make the mind more capable of integrating new information and creative connections. In other words, when you light up about something, your brain isn't just experiencing a feeling, it's building connections. The opposite is also true. Neutral, flat, unimpressed, gets you through the day. But it doesn't build anything. It doesn't generate new ideas, new connections, or new ways of seeing. Excitement does. So when you got genuinely excited over something small, when you couldn't help it, when it happened before you could decide whether it was appropriate, your brain was doing something most people have quietly trained themselves out of. It was paying attention, fully, without deciding in advance whether the thing was worth it. That's not immaturity. That's exactly how curious, high-functioning minds engage with the world. 2. Daydreaming instead of staying present. You were there. Physically, you were right there. But your mind had gone somewhere else entirely. Some half-formed idea, a conversation you haven't had yet, a scenario that doesn't exist and probably never will. And by the time you came back, someone was already looking at you. You've probably been told to focus, to be present, to stop drifting. But researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara, found something that changes the picture. When they tracked people's daydreaming habits, in the lab and across 5 days in real life, they found something fascinating. Personally meaningful daydreaming, the kind where your mind wanders toward things that actually matter to you, predicted higher real-world creative behavior and daily inspiration. Fantastical daydreaming, building imaginary scenarios, exploring what if, predicted better creative writing quality and more creative output day to day. The mind that won't stay still isn't malfunctioning. It's doing something specific. It's making connections across time, across ideas, across things that have nothing obvious in common. That's not something you can do when you're locked in place. The people who stay perfectly present in every single moment, who never drift, never wander, never follow a thought somewhere unexpected, aren't more focused. They're just less likely to arrive somewhere new. Your mind left because it had somewhere to go. It just didn't ask permission first. 3. Asking why, like a child who won't drop it. You asked why. And then, when the answer came, you asked why again. And maybe a few times more after that. Not to be difficult, not to challenge anyone. Just because the first answer didn't close the question, it opened 3 more. People around you learned to brace for it, or they got tired of it, or they gave you an answer that was clearly designed to end the conversation, and you could tell, and you felt the pull to keep going anyway. Here's what was actually happening. Psychologists have a term for what you were doing: need for cognition. It describes the drive to seek out, engage with, and find genuine satisfaction in difficult thinking. Not the ability to think, the appetite for it. The desire to go deeper when most people have already decided they've gone far enough. The why that other people found exhausting was the mechanism driving that difference. When you asked why until you actually understood something, not just until you had an answer that sounded like an answer, you were doing what high-functioning minds do. You were refusing to accept a placeholder for understanding. That's not childish persistence. That's intellectual honesty. Most people grow out of it because the social pressure to stop asking is enormous. You just didn't. 4. Making everything into a game. You turned it into a competition, or a challenge, or a puzzle with arbitrary rules that only you cared about. Getting across the room without stepping on cracks. Seeing if you could finish something in a certain amount of time. Setting a personal record for something that has no leaderboard. Turning a boring task into something with stakes, even when you invented the stakes yourself. People around you either found it entertaining or faintly exhausting. Either way, they probably didn't call it a sign of intelligence. But a University of Zurich psychologist named René Proyer spent years studying playfulness as a personality trait in adults, the tendency to reframe situations as stimulating, interesting, or entertaining, even when there's no external reason to. He found that playfulness was associated with better academic performance, not just more enjoyment, better actual outcomes. And across his broader research, playfulness in adults consistently linked to higher creativity, stronger motivation, and greater adaptability. The playful mind wasn't less serious about results. It was more engaged in the process of getting there. When you gamify something, when you manufacture a reason to care, invent a constraint, create a challenge out of something flat, you're doing something specific with your attention. You're generating engagement from the inside, rather than waiting for it to arrive from outside. That's not immaturity. It's one of the more sophisticated things a brain can do. Most people need external motivation to perform. You learn to build your own. 5. Refusing to do things the normal way. There was a normal way to do it. Everyone else was doing it that way. And you looked at it, understood it, and then found a different route. Not because you were being difficult, but because the alternative seemed more interesting, or more logical, or because you couldn't stop yourself from wondering what would happen if you tried it differently. People called it stubborn, or inefficient, or just strange. Psychologists have a name for the personality trait at the center of this. Openness to experience, the tendency to seek out novelty, engage with unconventional ideas, and resist the pull of established routines, is consistently identified as the single, strongest personality predictor of creative achievement across almost every domain it's been studied in. The person who always has to try it a different way isn't wasting time. They're doing exactly what high creative minds do, treating most situations as questions that haven't been fully answered yet. The normal way is a suggestion. You just never quite believed otherwise. 6. Constantly losing track of time. You looked up and 2 hours had gone. You weren't sure where they went. You weren't bored. You weren't avoiding anything. You were just completely inside something. And when you came back out, time had moved without you noticing. People treat this like a character flaw, a sign you're disorganized or unaware or irresponsible with your day. What's actually happening has a name: flow. And the research on it says something very specific about who experiences it and when. A study published in the Creativity Research Journal put participants through different versions of an executive function test, a task that measures attention and mental flexibility at varying levels of difficulty. What they found was that flow, and the time distortion that comes with it, only occurred at one difficulty level: moderate challenge. Not too easy, not too hard. Right at the edge of what someone could actually do. That's the critical part. You can only lose track of time when the task is genuinely demanding enough to absorb you. Which means the people who lose time most often are the same people who keep seeking out tasks that push them, not tasks they can coast through. Losing track of time isn't absent-mindedness. It's a sign your brain found something worth everything it had. Most people never get there. You just can't seem to stop. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and click the video on screen.